Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to CongaCast, where we discuss all things video games, especially relating to Nintendo. I'm your host, Ryan, and I'm here together with my co-host, Adonis. Adonis, say hello to the nice people.
Hello. How you doing, everybody? It's good to be back. For anybody watching the video segment of our stream, we now have an Animal Crossing cafe on the TV in the background. It's no longer just the void. I hope you guys enjoy.
That's beautiful. I'm sure all those nice villagers are enjoying a nice cup of coffee or tea. So,
They are.
why don't we get into some of the topics? We don't have any Nintendo topics today. I feel like Nintendo has been very close-lipped and quiet, as you kind of would expect on the eve of their big reveal in April. So let's jump around the to other companies what they're doing. So first topic for today, Adonis, Elden Ring Night Rain had a network test. Of course, this is a game you're looking forward to immensely. So why don't you just clue us in? What was this network test and how did it go?
So it went really, really well. TLDR, it went great. The network performed pretty. It was very stable on PC. I know console players had some problems, but that probably stems from what was going on with Sony as a whole. I know they've been having lots of connectivity issues. The game itself looked masterful. It looked like so much fun. The way they did the network test was they had people sign up. I think it was a couple or like a few months ago, if I remember correctly, and it was like totally random, like completely random. Although strangely, a bunch of influencers got codes. Like there wasn't a single influencer missing, which I totally understand. Like that's marketing. Um, but I was not selected, unfortunately. But I was able to watch a lot of live streams, which all of which made the game look so good. It only included four character select. Like there's only four characters you could select from. Only a select few bosses could appear. So they're really leaving a lot to be discovered when the game actually comes out, which was really cool of them to do, I think. Um, the gameplay is interesting. It's very similar to Elden Ring and Souls as at large, but it kind of is different. It's so hard to explain because one, I haven't played it, and two, it's very nebulous because it feels a lot faster, which is why people, including myself, really liked Bloodborne because of it was a lot more aggressive, a lot faster. You're playing with other players. There's multiple bosses and boss fights. So like there's always something going on the battlefield. The map is fully randomly generated, although I think that was very watered down. The random generation of the network test was not as randomly generated as the normal game will be when it comes out. And it seems as though the general consensus from the community is that this game is going to live or die on the RNG elements, which is something that From Software hasn't really done before. They've never really done anything like that. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't have faith in them to figure it out. Um, and what I mean by that random number generatedness is like the randomly generated gear. Let's say the gear is very stingy. Your runs will be a lot more difficult, which I know is a staple for From Software. But if they dial it too far in the badly generated loot direction, could make the game not as fun. But then if you go too far in the other direction, it becomes too easy, and then it doesn't feel like From Software, and then that is a whole problem in itself. The randomly generated environment also is very big. They really need to nail the because they're going for Souls like rogue like or
Mm.
roguelite. Am I which one am I supposed to choose here, Ryan?
Either one, I guess. Probably more
Okay,
rogue like than
okay.
light.
So that's what Ryan said. So if he got it wrong, you can blame him and not me. um, they're going for Souls like roguelike, and they need to nail the randomness of the world. If it feels too samey between runs, then it's not going to feel roguelike, and then it's gonna feel weird, right? So they really have to nail the randomness of each run, which is going to be tough. But this is literally a multiple game of the year studio we're talking about, you know.
Yeah. I kind of have faith in like From Software delivering. Um, my opinion on something like this is like it's just not the full release. It's a network test, so like any
Yeah.
qualms you may have or on any unfamiliarity you may have with the game, uh, you know, should be corrected by the final release. If someone were to purchase this, they would have a little more time with it before they can really give an opinion one way or the other, in my opinion. So I see this as like exactly what it is. It's a network test. It's for the devs to make sure everything's working correctly or whatever. So like, um, I'm kind of in the camp. I would need to like wait and see a little bit more before like I would have an opinion. That's kind of where I stand.
Yeah, and it was a very short network test. It was only like, I think it was what, like 3 days, and even then it was like a set time period. You could only play the
Yeah.
game a few hours worth.
Yeah, I
Um,
think everyone had like an hour or so each day. So that's
yeah,
really, especially for like a rogue like when it's so much about repetition and replaying and getting better because you know the map more, or the strategies more. Uh, I feel like you would need a little more time to pass like good judgment.
yeah, totally. That's totally the case, and I think that um, more is going to be revealed as we get closer to. I think the release date is in May, the end of May. I could be wrong about that. I think it's like May 30th or something like that.
That's so soon. That's like really soon.
It is. Yeah, I was not expecting that. I thought they were going to push at least for the summer, if any, like no earlier than that. But it seems as though they revealed the game very close to being like release ready, which is
Yeah.
cool. Like I like that. I like when studios do that. I don't. I like not. I don't like having to see a trailer for a game and then wait 10 years. I don't like
Right.
that. Bethesda, hello,
Yeah,
are
but
you
I
there?
was just gonna say Bethesda.
I think that trailer for Elder Scrolls 6 is like over a decade old now.
I
Um,
This is a sidetrack, but I gotta mention this. When that trailer showed for Elder Scrolls 6, or the teaser really, that was 7 years after the release of Skyrim. It has now been 7 years since that teaser has been revealed. That was what, like 2018. So just sit
what
on that
is
for a minute.
what is going on over there? That's a conversation for an entirely other day. Uh,
Yes.
so yeah, it's nice that the release is so close, and from what I've seen, which is not much, we haven't seen much in terms of we saw more bosses in the trailer than we did in the network test. So really, really, really looking forward to this game. It has such a solid foundation for what little we saw. It looks like it literally looks like a it's gonna win some categories in this year's game awards,
Yeah.
which is this is a year that is jam packed with really good games. So overall, looking pretty dang good.
It'll have its fans. I think the only people that will really be alienated will be From Software fans who really don't like roguelikes, which I don't think that's like a huge overlap there. I think most people that like Souls-like games like roguelike games. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
me.
Like I said, wait and see approach, but I think like that's really the only sect of people that could be alienated.
I wonder what the price will be. That's the one thing I'm really curious about. This feels like a $40 game, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But we're going to
Funny
talk about that more later.
Yeah, funny you say that. Pricing on video games is on the docket for this episode, so keep listening if you're tuning in. We appreciate you tuning in. But before we get to that, we're going to talk a little bit about everyone's favorite company, Blizzard, and some of the changes that they're making to Overwatch 2. So, um, Blizzard has come out and said that they will radically overhaul some aspects of Overwatch 2, including the return of loot boxes, perks, and they're also introducing a third person mode. So yeah, Overwatch 2, it's been out for about 2.5 years, released to some, controversy with Overwatch 1 being phased out, that sort of thing. And now looks like they're bringing back loot boxes, which, if anyone's not too familiar, it's basically a microtransaction kind of uh, payment system that not too many people are a fan of. Adonis, why don't you clue us in what's going on with Overwatch 2?
So the reason why I think this is good to talk about is not because we want to know what's going on with Blizzard. obviously. I think this is a very good example of why competition in the video, especially in the video game market right now, is so good. Why is Blizzard doing this, Ryan? Well, I'm glad you asked that. You specifically asked that. I'm glad. Thank you for asking that question.
You're welcome.
Marvel Rivals. I don't think we've talked about Marvel Rivals at all on the show yet, have we?
Not
I could be
really.
wrong about that. Yeah. So what Marvel Rivals is, I'm sure everybody's already heard of it. It's a what's the word for those games? Like a competitive hero shooter. Um,
Hero shooter, yeah.
it's with all the Marvel characters, and it released to a massive community. Like this game has pretty decent numbers even right now. Like it's holding its audience very well. It's a good game. I haven't played it. It's also free to play if I remember correctly, with microtransactions and all that stuff. Um, and it really did suck away a lot of that Overwatch audience. Like I'm of the mind that some games are literally too big to fail, but Overwatch, it's hurting. Marvel Rivals really did take away a lot of the Overwatch audience, um, which is good. When a game has a monopoly over a genre, it can do anything at once or nothing at all, and the game either stagnates or it becomes this grotesque corporate like money pit, which I think Overwatch did become. I don't have anything particularly against Overwatch. I don't play it. I never did. But I know that the business practices on the side of that of Overwatch have not been great. Um,
Yeah.
and innovation has been all but non-existent. Like, they literally didn't even release the PvE mode. If that isn't saying how much a competition was needed, then I don't know what will, right?
Yeah, and that was
Um,
like a pre-release promise, right? That they were gonna have a PvE mode
yeah,
or whatever. Yeah. This is like I'm always just a little grossed out by these like games that try to just suck your life away, like Overwatch 2. Uh, it's one of those games you just have to like be. This is like the game you play. Like I know there are some people out there that this is their jam. Great for you. Not my thing. But it is interesting that like Marvel Rivals has captured kind of like that core base away from Overwatch 2 to the point where like it's causing Overwatch 2, which is like the granddaddy of hero shooters, to have to make some changes just to stay relevant. One change they're making is the loot boxes that are coming back, and I may have misdescribed it earlier, but it's essentially like you click the button on the game, and it's a roulette of like what are you going to unlock, and it's usually some cosmetic for your character or whatever. Thankfully, the big issue with them before is that they're usually paid for. Thankfully, that is not the case here. Loot boxes are coming back, but only through free means, which is good because if it's paid, it's effectively gambling. And there's like kids that play video games and stuff
yeah,
like that. So I'm a fan of free when it comes to that kind of stuff. If you monetize a loot box, it's basically pull the wheel, spin, for $1 and see what you get, which I'm not a fan of.
yeah. No, I'm not a fan of that either, and I think it's good that it is free. But you know, I'm not really a fan of that. This is the only game you can play, and they're keeping their season passes. Like that season pass thing is still there. That is still paid, um, and I think that although it is great, it didn't come about until it absolutely had to. So what the heck else are they hanging on to? I think
Yeah.
Marvel Rivals really did expose the how like stagnant the game industry can become if there's no competition. Another great example of this, League of Legends. This is exactly the same thing, same area that League of Legends is in. A total domination on the MOBA front. Um,
Yeah.
although I think that Riot Games has done a better job with a much better job with League of Legends than Blizzard has done with Overwatch. Like competition is important. Overwatch
Yeah.
fans are benefiting from another game being as good, if not better, than their game. It's just really interesting to see. And like textbook market analysis, like competition coming in and making things better for everybody. And I hope this trend continues with lots of like bigger games and bigger studios.
Yeah. No, great point. Great point. I'm glad you brought this one to my attention because it is something I'm, passionate about. Um, the video game industry is a little more close knit than maybe other industries where like where the more and more as time goes on, it's trending more towards consolidation. So when you get at something like this where it's like, hey, this new game takes a lot of the same concepts but makes it better and it's more creative, and then pushing the original granddaddy of hero shooters to kind of up its game, I think that's great. So you know more power to Marvel Rivals. Thank you for existing, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, by the way, I wanted to bring something up to you. So, fun fact, really kind of has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but um, tangentially, Peggy ruled that Balatro, we talked about Balatro on the show before. It's a
Yeah.
very popular card game, video game that was literally up for Game of the Year last year. It ruled that that game was dangerous for promoting gambling themes and being dangerous for younger audiences in terms of like showing them how to gamble, how to play poker, which it doesn't. It doesn't do that, not even a little bit. But Peggy also refused to rule that EA and their loot box shenanigans were not gambling.
Yeah.
What do you think happened there, Ryan? A little bit of money on the side?
It could be that. I honestly think it's more so like Peggy is probably just very misguided. So yeah. The fact that a game like Balantro, which is a simulated poker like game, there's no actual gambling going on.
Yeah.
You buy the game, you own it, and then you play it. There's no $1 to up the ante or anything like that.
Could you imagine?
Uh, it'd be like slapping an 18 plus label on a solitaire game. You know what I mean? Like there's no gambling involved.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's kind of
so
ridiculous. But then yeah, just the fact that there's like something that you could actually equate to real life gambling, which is paying $1 or $2 to spin a wheel and see what cosmetic your player can get in game. That's not being treated the same. It's kind of ridiculous. And I honestly hope like Peggy reverses their decision on that. The gambling, whatever they're calling it, the simulated gambling being the ruling here, is kind of ridiculous. And honestly, I think after enough time they'll reverse course because it's really that bad of a decision in my
yeah,
opinion.
and it could really hurt the bottom line for the guy who made Balatro, which sucks, but he's doing just fine. Thankfully, he's made a lot of money. I really like the person that made Balatro. I think they deserve better treatment than that. That is not on today's. That's just a little fun fact. I apologize for derailing us.
No, I'm all good with fun facts. We have fun on the show, so I'm all about the fun facts here. So,
True.
but speaking on pricing, I guess I didn't realize, but we got a lot of topics related to pricing and money and all that greedy stuff today. Um, let's talk a little bit, Adonis, about game pricing. Now, this is a hot topic nowadays in the video game industry. So, a little bit of background for I would say the N64 PlayStation era games were whatever they were. Some games were 40, some were 50, some were 60. There wasn't really a set in stone standard, I should say, for what pricing was. Then we get to the GameCube, PlayStation 2, Xbox era, and $50 became the standard. Everyone was on the disc medium by then. $50 was considered the standard. Then we jumped to Xbox 360. The Wii state, I should say, the Xbox 360, Wii, PS3 era. You saw Microsoft and PlayStation jump up to $60 per game, while the Wii stayed at $50 per game as a weaker console. I think that was the justification. And then we've had 60 for forever, right? It's been 60. That's been the standard for a game. Yes, there's been games that have DLC, which is content that comes after the game release. Sometimes they'll charge you 10 or 15 bucks if you want to buy it. Sure, makes sense. Since I would say around 2020 and 2019, starting to see games become $70, starting to buck the trend of games being 60. Now we're seeing a max of 70. Some games are even going a little beyond with, you get the gold pass, which is going to include all the DLC that will release, forever, all that good stuff. But standard is now trending towards 70. And this is making a lot of people not very happy. I think a lot of people feel that the jump from last generation to now the PS5, Xbox Series generation really doesn't justify the price increase. There's arguments going the other way where people say, hey, we were buying N64 games back in the day for $50 or $60. If you consider inflation or whatever, that's a lot more than $70 is today. So a lot of people have an opinion on this, one way or the other, Adonis. But I think it's a great topic for today because it's very relevant and it's something that
Sure
affects
is.
us all. If you're playing video games, you're probably buying video games. So let's hear it.
Yeah, it's an expensive hobby. The new games are coming out monthly, if not even faster than that. And in today's economy, boomer moment, just just then, in today's economy, $60 is a decent amount of money. You can't just be spending that on just anything as frequent as games are releasing. And then to be asking to increase that price is very unattractive to a lot of people. And I think, understandably, everything else is getting more expensive. Literally everything is getting more expensive right now. So like, yes, you have the argument of inflation. That's a thing. I'm not stupid. I actually have my minor in economics. Like I totally understand why this is happening. But saying it's overdue is that requires nuance. It's not overdue. The increase in a budget for a video game does not correlate with what we're being delivered, one, what the devs are being paid, two, and actually that was both. That was the only two things I wanted to mention. There wasn't a third thing. I think there might have been, but it's gone. But my point is that inflation of the price of video games does not track with what's being delivered and what the devs are being paid. That's what I want to talk about first. Is the median salary for a dev, especially in a company like Blizzard, has not increased much or much at all, like even a little bit. A lot of devs are still being paid very much so under the industry standard over at a company like Blizzard or Activision. They're just a lightning rod. What can I say other than that? And
Yeah.
they're trying to take home more money. Where is that money going? It's only either going to the budget, the outrageously large budget of a video game, or the pockets of the shareholders and of the board executives of the company. If I saw a track record of the increase in price or increase in labor cost for devs, like dev salaries were getting higher, I would be much more likely to pay more for a video game. Absolutely. Like I'm paying so that devs can be paid higher. Like that's one thing. The other thing is the budget. I want to talk about the budget. We did not ask for A-list actors in video games. I feel like that's a very large part of why these games have such outrageous budgets. Something like Concord, right? That had around $400 million total for budget. Like, it did not need to be that expensive. How did it get to that point? That increase in budget is not our fault. We should not have to pay more because of that gross mismanagement of the budget. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I kind of go back and forth on this. I understand the point of no one wants to pay more money. We got to spend money on everything else in the world. It sucks to pay more money for a hobby. I also see the point where people will say, well, it's just kind of due because this is how the world works. This is how inflation works. Over time, goods become more expensive nominally because inflation goes up. So I get all that. I'm kind of leaning on the side of in a vacuum, it makes sense to increase from 60 to 70. with some of the other trends in the video game industry in specific, it's a little more insulting that things are going to become 60 to 70. And I agree with a lot what you said. Budgets are clearly overblown for a lot of AAA games. I mean, you brought up Concord having a reportedly $400 million budget.
Yeah, reportedly.
Even
Yeah.
even games like without that, there's like the new Spider-Man game that is supposedly costing $300 million. There's just so many examples we can run down of games just having outrageous budgets. It's very similar to the movie industry, the way I see it, where everything is just so boom or bust. Either you have indie movies coming out that are close to nothing, or you have these crazy expensive movies that are, hundreds of millions of dollars. It's very similar in the video game industry. So, how do you combat that if you're someone in the room deciding how do you make a profit for your shareholders? One thing is you increase the prices, right? You increase the price of video games. That makes sense on paper, but like your point, you don't need to make the budgets that high. I think there is a vacuum in the middle where there just really aren't a lot of what you would call AA games, where nothing needs to be this $200 million budget every time. How about a game that costs 20 million to 50 million, And if it's a
Yeah.
moderate success in terms of sales, it's going to make a profit. How about we bring that kind of stuff back? And I'll give the Switch some credit here. The fact that the Switch exists has allowed uh, other companies to kind of develop for the Switch and say, hey, we're going to remake a game from the GameCube era. Like, I think of Battle for Bikini Bottom, the SpongeBob
Yeah.
remake. Would that game really exist if we only had the PS5 and Xbox Series? I kind of
Good
doubt
point.
it. The fact that you have the Switch that has its install base, that is as popular as it is, that is as underpowered as it is, has allowed this niche of developers that just want to develop what I would call AA games. They're not going to have crazy budgets. They can sell all right and they can still make a profit. So, anyway, going back to the topic at hand, $60 to $70 in terms of games. Other gross practices that are kind of happening that make me weary of the $70 increase is, like we were talking about at the top of the show, a lot of the other monetization that's going into video games. There are some games that get sold today. Call of Duty is a great example. You buy it for $70. After buying it for $70, the game is constantly pushing you to spend more and more on it. Hey, you're going to play multiplayer every day. You got to look good. You got to have a cool skin on your character. That's going to be $5. You got to have a cool little graphic on your gun. That's going to be more money.
Oh
Um,
God.
you got to buy the season pass, and the season pass is going to have all the DLC. If you want, you can buy it at launch for a cheaper price than if you were to buy it all separately. And they're selling you on something that hasn't even been developed yet. You know what
Stop.
I mean? So
Stop. Stop. Please. Please stop.
So that's the kind of stuff that bothers me when we're talking, or when companies are talking increasing from 60 to 70. It's not the only thing that's happening. You know, in a vacuum, 60 to 70 makes a lot of sense. In the current state of the industry, it makes a little bit less sense in my eyes. So I think
Agreed.
that's where I stand. One thing I would say to anyone listening is, we all can vote with our wallet. I honestly rarely buy games at launch anymore because I don't want to pay 60 or 70. I wait for a sale. If you look behind me, if you're watching on video, I got plenty of games behind me that are on my
Mhm.
backlog, which I'm trying to get through. That's kind of where my heart is. I don't really have a strong desire. I mean, there is definitely some games, don't get me wrong, I'd love to play on release. But I would say just vote with your wallet, people. If you're not happy with $70 games, other aggressive tactics from these companies and try to get your money, just don't cave, man. I mean, I just don't put up with anything that you don't want to put up with. That's what I would say. The power really is with the consumer in my eyes.
Yeah, totally. They'll start feeling that. And in fact, I think they kind of already have. Look at what happened with Concord. I hate to keep bringing up the same example, but this is really a moment of the consumers voting with their wallet. Like, who the hell
Yeah.
wanted this? No one asked for this. One, no one asked for this. And two, no one asked for it to be $400 million. That was your fault, not ours. So I think the consumers really have started to wake up. I know you and I have. I only spend money on games and companies that I really adore and who have earned my respect. like From Software, like Capcom, like, companies like that. But there's another side to this story. It's not just, so black and white. There are games that really should be worth more money. Baldur's Gate 3, I don't think there is a better example than that. I would have paid $100 for that game. Now, I didn't know I would until after I played it. I was like, oh, this game was only $60. I can't believe that. Um, but then there's a game like Diablo 4, which was $70, which absolutely should not have been worth that much money. It should be the other way around. Diablo 4 should have been 60 and Baldur's Gate 3 should have been 70 or even 100. So there are games that are warranting that higher price tag. But if you look closely, the only people who are championing this higher video game price, I could be wrong about this. I could just be looking in the wrong places. But the only people and companies who are championing this higher game prices are the ones who shouldn't be, like Blizzard and Activision. That's like the fourth time I used them as a bad example. I don't see any representatives of From Software, of Intrepid, the people that made Ash of Creation. Actually, that's a bad example. That's a subscription based game. Who are the people that made Baldur's Gate 3 again? I always forget the name of the studio.
Larian Studios.
Larian Studios. You don't see anybody over there talking about that. I think that's telling, right?
Yeah.
The games that are the best examples of why we should have higher priced video games are not pushing for it. It's the other companies that are.
Yeah,
I think that's
it's the
really
old
telling.
guard. It's the big companies, EA, Ubisoft, who would love that. They've been around forever. They're kind of running out of ways to increase shareholder value. As you would delicately put it. So that's kind of like the next frontier. Is hey, once we get our games up to 70 and we get consumers comfortable with that, hey, that's going to be great for us.
Yeah.
And I encourage everyone, let's not get too comfortable. Vote with your wallet. And yes, value is very subjective. The price, I should say, the price of a game is subjective. The value it brings is subjective. So, like, everyone should pay what they would want to pay for a game. Don't feel inclined to just kind of roll over and be like, well, $70 is the new standard. No, I really don't think it needs to be like that. Let these companies, in a way, sweat it out. Maybe get burned on going over budget on some of these like crazy high budget games.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I hope I don't sound too malicious. I'm not trying to be like, ooh, doom and gloom to the big guys, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I think I made my point across.
They have a lot to bleed off. They got a lot of money that they can lose until they are
Yeah.
really hurting. But what really frustrates me about that is the ones with all the money don't feel it. The people who are working on the ground floor making the video games, they are the ones who feel the pain because they get laid off. That is just so unfortunate about this whole thing. And I feel so bad for all the devs that have lost a job recently, which have been a lot, like huge amounts of layoffs in the video game scene, which just sucks. But it's just, that's just the way the market works. And I think that I can hope for change and I can push for it, but got a lot of work to do. There was one more thing about this whole situation that I wanted to talk about that you brought up. We talked about it a little bit before we got on the show. Is licensing is also a huge problem. They're
Yeah.
outrageously expensive. And Spider-Man, like you said, is a great example of this. So you want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. That's a great point. I would have forgotten to mention. So, just like all media, I tie it back to the movie industry because I see it as very parallel.
Yeah, totally.
Executives like to do the safe thing. Executives like to make sequels, remakes of old stuff. This is in the movie industry I'm talking about. And, video game industry isn't too different from that. A lot of things are sequels of the game that came before, remasters, ports, that kind of thing. And we see this with the box office, with movies. The most successful movies, like it or not, are usually Marvel movies year after year, DC movies, that kind of stuff. Things where, there's a big franchise or there's a big name, A-list actor, A-list director attached to it. That's what consumers are comfortable seeing. We live in a streaming age where there's no need to go to the movies every weekend and spend 10, $15 on a ticket and popcorn for a potential dud. People want to go something that is perceived safe. Hey, I go to the movies, I watch the latest Spider-Man. It'll probably be pretty solid, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where that kind of bleeds into the video game industry is, yes, the video game industry has all those same things, but there's also the topic of licensing those properties or IPs for those games. So, what am I talking about? Specifically, I wanted to bring up in the latest Spider-Man game, I believe the budget was around 250 to 300 million
Ooh.
for the last Spider-Man game. And get this, Adonis, fact check me if I'm wrong. The licensing fees were around 80 to 100 million for the Spider-Man IP alone. Now that is just like outrageous that is that big of the budget. And I don't know what you do about that because if you want to make a Spider-Man video game, you got to get the license. And I guess that's going to be one of those games that has to have a high budget. But it's just crazy, It's just crazy that it's gotten to this point where even if you want to license an IP for your game, something super big like Spider-Man, it's going to cost that much. It's crazy.
Yeah, and like if I'm to think of it from like a bird's eye view, it is a good idea. It is outrageously expensive at first because you had to fork up almost, if not more than $100 million to get the license. But then you have the license, and then you have the community, and that community is very large, especially for Marvel and Spider-Man. So like business wise, yeah, it's a good decision. But then, you know, then you have like a $200 million budget, which um which really kind of even more emphasizes the outrageous budgets of video games that are brand new IPs. Um like I understand why Spider-Man had such a large budget. I don't understand why something that is completely new, that having even more of a large budget than something that requires a license. So kind of also highlights the problem of outrageously large like video game budgets. So yeah, like to kind of sum up what I think of the whole thing. I don't see a reason to go all the way up to 100 at all. No, there's no question whether or not I think that $100 for a video game is a good idea. Generally, this is an overall, like there are exceptions to that rule. $70 is a lot more reasonable, but only in very select few cases like Elden Ring, like Monster Hunter Wilds, like GTA 6, which people are talking about even going up to that $100 mark. Um, but I don't think there is good enough case yet.
Yep. Yep. All right. Not to end the show on such a downer,
Yeah,
but
true.
the corporate greed sometimes gets in the way of the hobby. So we just gotta discuss sometimes. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
um, before we get into what we have been playing recently, is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
No, pretty light week in terms of news, especially in Nintendo news. I've been keeping my eye on that park that's opening up in Florida,
Nice.
the Mario Park. I'm so excited to check that out. So had my eye on that. Um, there was one little bit of news. I think you mentioned it earlier. And it was Nintendo news, wasn't it?
Yeah, I just saw something in passing that, again, Nintendo's been very quiet. I saw that they're taking away their gold
Oh,
points system for the eShop. So,
right.
if you ever buy like something on the eShop, they give you like 1% or 2% back in like gold coins, and you can use the gold coins towards your next game or whatever. So it's not that big of a deal. But if you have
Yeah,
gold coins, you should use them before I think it was like March 26th. It
I'm gonna do
expires.
that.
Yeah, it made me think about it, and I was like, well, shoot, I probably have like a dollar or two in gold coins. Let me just make sure I get something that I would want, get it on sale, and get a dollar or two towards it. So,
Yeah.
PSA, use your gold coins before they expire, everyone.
I thought it was. I forgot that's what it was. I thought it was something a lot more lighthearted than that. So we're also getting something
Just more
taken
money
away from.
stock.
Yeah. No, that's all. That's all I got for this week.
Sweet. Well, the only game I've been playing is Red Dead Redemption 2. Just been playing that on the
Mm.
Steam Deck. Oh, actually, there's another game, but let me continue with this.
Okay.
I probably played another hour or two or three since last week. Not too much time for gaming this week, but there was one other game that I played this week, and I have to Google this name because it was so ridiculous. Yes, here it is. All right, are you ready for this, Adonis? This
I'm
week,
ready.
I played a game called 5D Chess with Multiverse Time Travel. Have you ever heard of 5D Chess with Multiverse Time Travel?
No.
So I had heard about this game like randomly like a year ago, and then just last week I saw it on sale on Steam for $6, and I was like, I think it's time I tried out 5D chess with multiverse time travel. And if anyone's ever played chess, first of all, chess is an awesome game.
Nope.
Second of all, this is basically chess, but at any time you can, let's say you're on move 4 or move 5 or whatever, you can take a piece on move 5 and move it back in time to move 1 or 2. And when you do that, you create a new timeline. So then all of a sudden you're playing two games, and your pieces are kind of jumping between timelines. And the goal of the game is to checkmate your opponent. But obviously, if they go into check, they can just move their king to another board. So it becomes like a mad chase across multiple timelines to checkmate your opponent. And so, long story short, I played one game the other night. It went on for 45 minutes. I had like 15 games going at the same time, and I finally checkmated the easiest difficulty in the game. And it was exhilarating. I don't know how I won. It just happened at one point, but I was so happy. And it was almost like a big like brain teaser, like a big brain puzzle to like try to chase the king across multiple timelines to checkmate it. So yes, this is the most absurd, most excellent game in the world.
I love this. First of all, Red Dead 2, I'm sure that's all great fun, great game. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about this game. The first image I found when I looked up 5D chess, and like the 5D whatever the title of this game is, and it says 5D chess is a psychological horror game. And it's
Psychological horror.
it's this
Yes.
giant image of like 100 games going on all at once. This is such a cool idea for a game. Do you know anything about the development studio about this? Is this an indie?
It's an indie. Yeah, I don't know anything else about them.
Awesome. That's awesome, man. This is a perfect example of a like a golden idea for a game. Not graphically intensive, not well, it super is a great gameplay intensive, especially if you get up to like 15 games going on at once. But this is just a shining example of the indie market right now. This is awesome. I love the idea of this game. You got to tell our friend Joey about this. He would get a kick out of this, and Andrew too. If you guys are
Yeah.
listening, check this out. This is so up your alley.
Yeah, I was thinking next time I have them over or have yourself over, maybe after a couple drinks or a couple cocktails, we break out this game and we just I don't even know like how people will react to it. Like, will it just be boring or will it just be exhilarating and confusing but also fun? Because when I was playing the CPU, it was confusing but also fun, which is a very rare combo.
Yeah, the two player potential of this game is phenomenal. I imagine that is so much fun to play with friends. Just pure chaos, like chess. Instead of being a chess battle, it's a chess war across multiple planes
Yes,
and
yes.
multiple timelines. This is so cool, man. I don't know how you came across this before me. This is such a cool idea. I'm always looking up and down Steam for little interesting games like this, and I hope it gets more Steam. It seems like it's got Steam. Oh, wow, pun intended. It seems like it's got a growing community. So this is a great find on your part.
Thank you, sir. So that's what I've been playing. What have you been playing this week, Adonis?
I've actually been playing quite a few things. I've been playing, obviously, I've been playing Ashes of Creation. What has happened since the last episode? Well, My exile from the city of Halcyon continued. I didn't feel strong enough to return to my city as a guardian, so I went into the Sand Squall Desert and fought and fought and fought, and stronger I became. Lots good gear, lots of good XP. Hit level 23. I conquered my, or no, sorry, I almost hit level 23. I am not level 23 yet. So my 23rd trial is still yet to be completed. And finally, I returned to my city to open arms from all the citizens. I announced in the citizen chat that they are now once again under my protection, and the whole city rejoiced to the return of Alexander, the hero of Halcyon. Um, and I just started patrolling the city again, killing players that were causing problems, killing mobs that just ended up in the town somehow. Just having an absolute blast with this game. Literally every time I open it, it's cinema. Like it's like a D&D campaign, like a walking D&D campaign. Um, I like I said, I got some better gear. Something really interesting happened on the server. So, a server wide like Zerg guild. What is a Zerg guild? A Zerg guild is just like a very very large guild, like group of players. All of the larger guilds in the server agreed to a 24-hour peace treaty to allow caravans to travel to the desert and bring funds from the bigger like nodes in the north away from the desert back down to the desert so that the desert cities could become more developed. So 24-hour 100% free to take your caravan. What is a caravan? A caravan is like a just like a literally it's like a carriage. You can put all your goods in, you can buy goods from the city you're starting in, take those goods to another city and sell them for gold. And the further you go, the more gold you make. So it's like, like trade routes. So a 24-hour free trade route from the north, like nodes with all the cities outside the desert, down into the desert. Anything else outside of that, you weren't safe. But if you took the route that was on we have like a public Discord for our server. There was a route designated that no one could attack, and the gold that was made in that day was outrageous, like hundreds and thousands of gold going to players and helping the desert nodes develop. um, like one player that I knew was like they made like 130 gold, which is a lot. It's like a lot. I only have like 10. I didn't do it
Dang.
because I think I didn't do it because I think it's boring. It's like I didn't feel like doing a caravan that day. I just didn't. um but and this whole thing was entirely orchestrated by players. This was not at all orchestrated by the devs or like the marketing team. Like no, nothing was done on Intrepid's part. This was entirely driven by players, um, and it was very successful. The desert nodes got the funding that they needed to help develop. They're just much less popular because it's hard to get there. There is no fast travel. You cannot fast travel in this game, and there's no flying mounts or anything like that. So distance is a very real thing, and that's why the desert nodes are very underdeveloped. But the server came together to help them out, and it worked. It was really really cool. And now, like with all that extra gold in what's the word, circulation, the markets are dry. Like there's nothing left to sell. Like everybody took their gold and spent it, so it went right back into the economy. And now prices are starting to come up. Just natural economics. Like that's exactly what we thought would happen. So just like I don't know if that sounds cool to anybody else, but like
More
I
talk about money this episode.
that's yes. Wow, we just got dollar signs in our eyes today. This is all fake money, so it doesn't count. Um, I just think that's so freaking cool. Like the players coming together to make such a large scale event completely outside of, well, within the bounds of the game, but outside of the influence of the devs and the actual team that's making the game. They had nothing to do with that. And I feel like a lot of stuff is going to start happening like that. So stay tuned. I'll be sure to talk about it if and when it happens. Um, Other game I've been playing, Helldivers 2. It's not looking good, Ryan. It's not looking good.
Are you losing Super Earth or whatever it's called?
Whatever it's called.
Uh-oh.
We'll be talking about that after we get done the show.
I just
Anyway.
insulted your god and your planet.
Yeah, at the same time. So what's going on? So there was a singularity from a planet we destroyed, a black hole. Don't ask about that. That wasn't our fault. We had to do that. It was necessary. We just had to nuke that planet. I mean, we had to turn it into a black hole. I mean, we had to save the planet.
Yep.
So the Illuminate, which is the third faction, these like squid-like aliens, are using dark energy to move the singularity towards Super Earth. It's not good, and it's getting faster. Unfortunately, we've already lost Angel's Venture. Hundreds of millions of free voting citizens are gone. Just like that. Singularity ate it all up, and they're all dead. There was nothing we could do. Within 3 days, I killed 5,000 Illuminate, and it was still not enough. And it's still moving, and the war goes on. And not even including the Illuminate threat, the Terminids, the bugs, have developed a new strain, the Predator bug. They're like these jet black and red bugs that are giant and they can turn invisible. The entire Helldiver Corps had no idea how to handle them for 24 hours. And then we figured out how to absolutely curb stomp them. There's just a non-issue anymore. The evolving war is so cool. When we got that planet destruction event, like it was live. Like we literally saw it happen. And with the new bug strain, the new Terminid, the Predator bugs, that felt like when we first started playing the game and had no idea how to fight against the enemies. It never gets old. I don't know how they do it, but that game, man, it's so much fun, and it just keeps getting more fun.
Yeah,
You know,
that's awesome, dude. It's cool that it still has that fresh and new feeling every time you play. So,
yeah.
anything
So
else you've been playing this week that you want to shout out?
that's pretty much it. Oh, I said I've been playing a lot of stuff, didn't I? I guess I really haven't. Play a little bit of Tears of the Kingdom at nighttime, as
Cool.
is usual. Never gets old. I have taken to riding the dragons on their full path. So
Yeah.
I rode Farosh all the way down into the depths and then all the way through the depths and all the way back up without falling off, which is just like strangely fun. I really enjoyed that. So yeah, that other than that, that's it.
I love that. Yeah, Tears of the Kingdom, one of those games you could always go back to, even just on the same save file, because when are you ever really done with one save file? You can just
Yeah.
play it forever. So, all right, well, awesome. I think that's going to do it for this edition of CongaCast. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into this episode. To stay up to date on the show, make sure to follow us on Twitter at CongaCast. For all business inquiries, please email congacast@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.
Take care. Bye bye.